Hello everyone. In continuation of my earlier lectures on chemistry of vitamins, in this lecture session we will discuss about chemistry of riboflavin or vitamin B2. So vitamin B2 is the first member of the vitamin B2 complex isolated from milk, hence it is called as lactoflavin. It was actually isolated from milk in 1897. And here 1 gram of this compound, Kuhn is actually the scientist who worked extensively on this compound. He termed this compound as a beautiful yellow substance, and 1 gram of this compound can be obtained from 1500 liters of milk or dried albumin from 34,000 eggs. So imagine, okay, so the compound is present in very less quantity, but among the resources, relatively high quantity is present in egg white, liver, kidney, heart, meat, and milk. And also it is found in anaerobic growth fermentation bacteria. Riboflavin is called as, the name came like, it contains ribose unit or ribotyl unit, so that's why ribo part came. Flavin means yellowish colored, so this compound is actually bright yellow in color, so that's why riboflavin is the name given to this. Although needed only in small quantities, riboflavin is very much essential for our body function, and if any lack of vitamin in food leads to specific outcomes like cracking of the skin at corners of the mouth and a fissuring of the lips. So like this one as well as this one, and swollen red beefy tongue. So these are some of the outcomes of lack of this vitamin. Corneal vascularization, sensitivity of eyes to light. This is one more peculiar symptom that you can see. Itching and scaling of facial skin. However, there is no clear associated disease and a deficiency has never been fatal. Okay, this will not cause death. By the end of 1932, Paul Gorgie, okay, so he has done extensive research work on B complex vitamins. So he has reported that 3 separate components were identified in vitamin B complex as needed by the rat. One of them is vitamin B1, antineuritic factor, vitamin B4, which prevented loss of coordination and ataxia, vitamin B2, anti-pellagra factor. Okay, so this is the way how he found 3 fractions in the water soluble component from this one rice bran as well as liver. He found in both the resources. Let's see the chemistry of riboflavin. Kuhn and Carrer, these are the 2 scientists who have done extensive work on chemistry of riboflavin. They worked on both synthesis as well as structural elucidation of riboflavin. Let's see one by one, the step by step how they elucidated the structure. First one is molecular formula. If you see the molecular formula is C17H20O6N4. Means it will have you will get 10 unsaturations from this by applying our formula. 10 unsaturations is so huge because we have only 17 carbons are there, and 10 unsaturations means definitely more than one benzene ring will be there, more than one aromatic rings will be there, as well as having so much of unsaturation. So that actually can be understood by just looking at the color. Okay, yellowish color means so much of extended conjugation is needed to obtain color in a compound. Presence of hydroxy groups, because just like in any other kind of unknown organic compound, functional group analysis revealed that there is a presence of hydroxy group. That too, upon acetylation, riboflavin upon acetylation, it gave tetraacetate because it consumed 4 moles of acetic anhydride to obtain riboflavin tetraacetate. So it clearly indicated that there is a presence of hydroxy group. So there is always a possibility that because we also have nitrogens, there is a possibility that nitrogen can be present as an amine. Okay, so amides can also be form. But let us see how actually presence of hydroxy groups is further finalized. Riboflavin is a photosensitive compound. it's a photodegradation reaction. Several reactions were done, but one of the reaction which helped significantly for structure analysis is mentioned over here. Riboflavin, upon exposure to sunlight in the presence of alkali, especially methanolic sodium hydroxide, helped in obtaining a faintly yellow colored compound. We call it as lumiflavin. Okay, so if you see the molecular formula, C17H20O6N4 is for riboflavin. Here it is C13H12O2N4, means 4 oxygens are gone and 4 carbons are gone. So this lumiflavin is a thermostable compound, and this compound is used for structural elucidation. Structure of lumiflavin was studied in a stage-wise manner. You have to carefully follow the scheme to understand how actually they derived at the structure. Okay, lumiflavin, first they have hydrolyzed it with the help of barium hydroxide. Here lumiflavin consumed 2 water molecules to give one of the known compound is urea and an unknown compound beta keto carboxylic acid. If you see the molecular formula, C12, only 1 carbon less, so that was most probably a part of, urea is a part of this structure. Okay, so urea contains CO, NH2, NH2, so that carbon is probably the carbon whatever lumiflavin lost. And here you can see nitrogens, 2 nitrogens are here, 2 nitrogens are less, so urea is actually derived from lumiflavin. Hence the beta keto carboxylic acid is to be analyzed now. Upon heating, this beta keto carboxylic acid lost its carboxylic acid unit as carbon dioxide, and it gave a compound which has shown characteristics of presence of a lactam. Lactam, how can you determine presence of lactam? Lactam can undergo lactam-lactim rearrangement, so it shows ketoenol tautomerism. So thereby it shows different pKa values and specific color reactions with reagents like ferrichloride. Okay, so these are some of the pathways to find out whether lactam is there or not. The later on, this lactam component is taken and hydrolyzed vigorously with the sodium hydroxide. Here again, it consumed 2 water molecules to give glyoxylic acid and an unknown compound with molecular formula C9H14N2. So this is the third compound. So first degradation gave beta keto carboxylic acid, second degradation gave lactam, third degradation gave a compound, unknown compound, a basic compound, and plus glyoxylic acid. So here the molecular formula is C11, and here 9 plus 2, 11. So definitely this glyoxylic acid is obtained after degradation of the lactam. Now we need to know the structure of this compound. Here they used several reactions, but 2 reactions which gave a clear indications are mentioned here. One of them is test with ferrichloride. Ferrichloride, upon testing on this compound, gave a blue precipitate, which is a characteristic reaction for compounds like this. Okay, N-methyl OPD, orthophylline diamine, on one of the nitrogen, if you have a methyl group, this type of compounds give a specific reaction, that is blue precipitate with ferrichloride. And the second one is Kuhn-Roth oxidation, that is KMNO4 extensive oxidation reaction, gave 2 moles of acetic acid. So whenever we get an acetic acid upon Kuhn-Roth oxidation, it indicates that the methyl group is attached to a quaternary carbon atom. So any kind of a structure, so at any stage, at any part, if a methyl group is attached onto a quaternary carbon atom, upon oxidative degradation with KMNO4, we get acetic acid in the degradation products. So that indicates presence of methyl group. So here they got 2 moles of acetic acid, indicating presence of 2 methyl groups. So combining these 2, Kuhn has finalized probable structure of the degraded product, that is fragment 3, as this. Means N-methyl orthophylline diamine containing 2 methyl groups on any 2 of the 4 carbons that are available over here. Because this is a very simple compound, Kuhn has synthesized a series of xylenes, diaminoxylines and confirmed the structure of fragment 3 as this one. What is this one? This is an orthoxylene. 1, 2, 3, 4 diamino N-methyl orthoxylene. So this compound was finalized ultimately, and from here he started building the structure of lumiflavin. So here what happened? So this is where we have this compound. Now it has to be fused onto glyoxylic acid, because here what is it that we are doing is only hydrolysis. Hydrolytic reactions can release an amide bond as well as an imine bond. So thereby we can join it across these two nitrogens, two carbons. And after that we can add this carbon dioxide as carboxylic acid, and then we can fuse it onto urea. Okay, so here probably we'll get 2-3 rings. It also supported having so many unsaturations over here. So let's see how the structure is built. Now the lactam upon hydrolysis is giving us this compound number 3. Okay, now glyoxylic acid has to be fused onto this compound. If you do that, what you will get? Acid part forms an amide bond with the NHCH3, and the second this aldehyde will form an imine bond from over here. So this is the only possibility, because aldehyde cannot form an imine with NHCH3, because this is a secondary amine. It will not form N double bond C is not possible on this side. So one of the most possible structure for compound number 2 is this one. Next one is this beta ketocarboxylic acid, that is the fragment number 1, actually gave this compound number 2. Then from where actually we can keep the carboxylic acid? So this is the carbonyl carbon that is available. So beta to this one, alpha and beta. So here we have to keep the carboxylic acid. So this is the way how probable structure that is possible for fragment number 1 is given. So this is alpha position, beta carbonyl group is there for this carboxylic acid. So this is one of the most probable structure for degraded product 1. Next one is lumiflavin actually upon hydrolysis is giving urea and this fragment number 1. So urea has to be fused across this C double bond O and C double bond O. Here how many carbons are there? 1, 2, 3. Urea has to be fused across this one nitrogen to this one nitrogen to this one. So here again we will have another imine group, here an amide group. So if you do it like that, so this is the urea component and this is the remaining fragment. So upon fusion we got this compound. So these two rings are what we call them as pteridyl unit, pteridine. So this is the probable structure. So this is the probable structure for lumiflavin. Okay, so now we have to, because this is only a proposal, so this has to be confirmed. So here Kuhn has synthesized lumiflavin starting from this one oxylene compound, diaminoxylene compound. So he has taken N-methyl 4,5-diamino orthoxylene. He fused it onto alloxan hydrate to obtain lumiflavin. This is a straightforward reaction and high yielding reaction. So this is alloxan hydrate, and this upon reaction with this diaminoxylene gave them straightforward straight away lumiflavin. Because lumiflavin shows the keto-enol tautomerism, so it can enolize from this side as well as this side. So that's why 3 different isomers are possible here. Okay, so to confirm it further, because they could not confirm the structure without ambiguity, because it is changing its chemistry. Keto-enol tautomerism is possible. So even if you go for thin layer chromatography or any other, even melting point also, you cannot get it single melting point. Okay, so that's the reason why it is derivatized as here in this NH group is replaced by NCH3 methylated over here to obtain tetramethyl derivative 1, 2, 3 and here one more methyl. So tetramethyl derivative which did not show any kind of keto-enol tautomerism. So thereby they could get the physicochemical constants properly. And then lumiflavin also was methylated to obtain the tetramethyl derivative, and both these derivatives were found to be identical, exactly identical. So this is the way how lumiflavin's structure is confirmed as this one. Okay, now this structure is to be further extended with the remaining carbons. Now see how actually the structure of side chain is confirmed. Riboflavin, upon exposure to sunlight in the presence of base, in the presence of methanol and sodium hydroxide, gave us lumiflavin. Okay, its structure is this one. Now we have seen in the previous slide the how actually the structure is confirmed. But as I told you, riboflavin is a photosensitive compound. So many photodegradation reactions were done. So one of the reaction which gave us a little bit of help in structure analysis is this one. When riboflavin is exposed to sunlight in neutral environment, it gave them a compound called as lumichrome. Lumichrome is exactly similar to lumiflavin as far as chemistry is concerned, except the presence of one extra carbon. Okay, and upon degradation, because scientists have done, Kuhn has done degradation studies similar to lumiflavin and identified that lumichrome is a dimethyl derivative of lumiflavin, means this one. Its structure is confirmed by using the routine procedure whatever he followed for lumiflavin, but here he has taken orthoxylin diaminoorthoxylin. Okay, so this one, because here in case of lumiflavin he used N-methyl derivative, so here there is no methyl group over here. So this is a straightforward reaction, and they found like lumichrome and lumiflavin are related, and only difference is methyl group. So here they confirmed that whatever that is already attached to nitrogen has been replaced by methyl group. Okay, so in this degradation reaction, most probably. So what they confirmed is like this is the nitrogen to which the side chain has to be attached. Now if you see the molecular formula of riboflavin and lumichrome is this one. The difference is C17H20O6 NN4 for riboflavin, and then C12H10O2N4 for lumichrome. The difference is C5H10O4. So 4 oxygens on 5 carbons means, so this particular side chain is so much of oxygen is there. So this is responsible for actual polarity. This could be responsible for actual polarity. And then if you compare the structure of lumichrome, where there is no hydroxy group is present. So all the 4 oxygens that are there in this remaining fragment must be hydroxy groups only. Okay, and if you see the unsaturations over here, because this is a fragment, so 1 hydrogen is to be added. If you add 2 hydrogens over here, you will get 0 unsaturation. So this must be a saturated aliphatic polyhydric alcohol. Now let's see how its structure is confirmed. The reactions are straightforward, very simple. Please observe closely the logic applied. Okay. Now riboflavin was taken, and upon acetylation what they got is a tetraacetate. That is what we have seen. The next one is methyl magnesium iodide. So the G. Wigler method is used for identification of active hydrogens. It means exchangeable hydrogens, if they are there, they can be identified. What they found is 5 hydrogens are there. So one of the hydrogen is over here, because on nitrogen you will have in riboflavin some attachment will be there. So one NH is over here, and 4 more OH groups as it is indicated from acidic anhydride reaction. So among the 5 active hydrogens, okay, 4 must be hydroxy groups. So in this way they identified 4 hydroxy groups are there. So how can we arrange 4 hydroxy groups on 5 carbons? Okay, so that arrangement is to be finalized now. Upon lead tetraacetate oxidation, it gave significant quantity of formaldehyde gas, and this is possible only when you have arrangement like this. hydroxy group next to hydroxy group next to another hydroxy group, if you have something like this, then every one of these carbons are going to be oxidized as formaldehyde, converted into formaldehyde. So you will see huge quantity of formaldehyde gas coming out of this oxidation reaction. Next one is to determine whether all these hydroxy groups are in as glycols. They have made to react with acetone. Acetone is a ketone, so ketones react with glycols to give acetonides, or we call them as acetal formation. Okay, a ketone reacts with one alcohol to give hemiacetal. Hemiacetal reacts with one more alcohol to give you acetal. So this is the way. Okay, so diacetal formation means this is the way how 4 hydroxy groups, if they are present like this, then only acetal formation can happen. Okay, so that's the way how they confirmed that 4 hydroxy groups must be there on the chain, that too like this. Okay, so 4 hydroxy groups. With this, scientists confirmed or proposed a structure like this, where lumiflavin is connected to a ribityle unit. But on ribityle unit we have 3 chiral centers are there. So these 3 chiral centers can give you 2 power 3, means 8 different isomers are possible, and this is only an N-glycoside. Okay, so this must be some kind of a sugar unit. Hence Kuhn has done so much of research work on this, synthesized several derivatives, and found that the configuration of this compound is exactly similar to D-ribose, a naturally existing D-ribose unit. So the proposed structure is revised as this one. Okay, with the chiral centers, everything defined. Now we have to confirm this structure. How to do it? Only via synthesis. Now let's see how actually this compound is synthesized. Synthesis of riboflavin. Here Carrer has proposed the synthesis, which we have to follow, because this is one of the easiest, simple to remember and straightforward. So here what he has taken is, first 3,4-dimethyl aniline was taken and is made to react with ribose. Ribose is an aldose, so aldehyde group that is over here can be made to react with this, and upon reductive amination, means imine formation followed by hydrogenation. We can use hydrogenation, or sodium cyanoborohydride can also be used, but at that time this is one of the very clean reaction they can use for synthesis of this compound. Okay, reductive amination was done to obtain this compound. This is then treated with disonium chloride to obtain azodide like this. Okay, because nitrogen over here is strongly nucleophilic, so ortho to this one, this position is highly reactive, so azodide formation happens on the alpha carbon, alpha to this nitrogen. This can be cleaved, this diazo compound can be cleaved by using hydrogenation reaction upon nickel catalyst. This is a standard reaction used for synthesis of anilines. Hence this amine was obtained in this way. Next they fused this entire compound with, what is this compound? Can you name? Just now we have seen this. This is alloxan hydrate to obtain the required compound. Okay, so this is the way how the riboflavin was actually synthesized. The reaction procedure is relatively straightforward and appreciable yields were obtained. But the only problem at that time is the source. This is ribose is very costly. So this is what made scientists to discover 2-3 different synthetic pathways. Now riboflavin is commercially provided via synthetic pathway only, because as you have seen, how many liters of milk is needed to obtain 1 gram of riboflavin? 1500 liters, or 34,000 kgs of 34,000 eggs are needed, egg whites are needed to obtain 1 gram of riboflavin. So that definitely that is not commercially viable. So synthetic procedure is the only way we have right now for obtaining commercial riboflavin. So friends, I hope you understood the chemistry clearly. Please understand the logic. Okay, so this is the logic whatever is needed for structural elucidation of natural products. Biological significance is, as you all knew, riboflavin is this one. Flavin component is a part of FAD, flavin adenine dinucleotide. This is adenosine part. This is one nucleotide. This is the second nucleotide, because this is base, sugar and phosphate. The entire 3 units are what we call them as nucleotides. So 2 units are there, that's why we call it as FAD, flavin adenine dinucleotide. And we have one more other thing, that is flavin mononucleotide, FMN, is only up to this phosphate. Okay, because this one base will be there, sugar will be there, and one more phosphate will be there. So up to this one we call it as FMN. FAD is a very important component as far as our biochemistry is concerned. It is a coenzyme for succinate dehydrogenase, where FAD acts as a hydrogen acceptor. Okay, so thereby it accepts 2 hydrogens and then it will become FADH2. It is used. This one you can see both in electron transport chain as well as in tricarboxylic acid cycle. Okay, so in both the places you can see this one. How actually it is showing its activity? So here in the ribosyl unit, in the riboflavin, pteridine unit, here you can see one double bond N here, one more double bond N over here. Here it accepts hydrogens from substrate, and this double bond N and double bond N accepts one proton, and electron from here is moving on to this, electron from here is moving on to hydrogen, oncoming hydrogen. So thereby NH and NH. So this compound is going to be formed. This is a high energy compound, so that's why it can be reverted back to FAD, and in that process, in the electron transport chain, it generates two ATPs are produced. So this is the way how riboflavin is acting as a coenzyme in the coenzyme for succinate dehydrogenase in the form of FAD. Okay, and it also has many other roles in maintenance of oxidation reduction potential of our biological system. That's the reason why riboflavin is a very important component for our biochemistry. So friends, I hope you understood the importance of riboflavin, its chemistry, and how actually its chemical structure is elucidated. And if you like this video, please share it with your friends and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'll meet you again with another very exciting lecture. Thank you friends.